this episode, we focus on a part of access control that many brand new learners do not think about right away because they picture users as human beings sitting at keyboards. Modern environments also depend on bots, background jobs, automated workflows, and software identities that move data, answer questions, trigger actions, and talk to other systems all day long. Some of these are built around artificial intelligence, AI, and others are simply service-based automation, but they all share one important truth. If they can access systems or data, they must be controlled with the same seriousness we apply to people. That matters because software does not get tired, hesitate, or pause to rethink a risky choice once it has been given permission to act. If a non-human identity has too much access, it can misuse that access at machine speed through error, compromise, or bad design. The safest way to manage that risk is to treat these identities as part of identity and access management, IAM, with a full life cycle from creation through review to retirement, and with least privilege guiding every decision along the way. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber-authored.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful starting point is to separate the ideas of an AI bot and a service account, because people often blend them together even though they are not exactly the same thing. An AI bot is usually a software process or agent that can interpret input, generate output, make recommendations, or trigger steps in a workflow based on rules, models, or retrieved information. A service account is the identity used by an application, script, service, or automated task to authenticate to another system and perform work. In practice, an AI bot may use one or more service accounts to read a knowledge base, open tickets, send messages, or update records, but not every service account belongs to an AI system. Some service accounts power simple integrations that move files, check system health, or connect one application to another with no intelligence involved at all. For a beginner, the key lesson is that the bot describes what the software does, while the service account often represents how it is trusted inside the environment. Both need control because both can become pathways to sensitive information or powerful actions. These identities matter so much because automation changes the scale and speed of risk. A human being with excessive access may cause damage through a mistake, but a bot with excessive access can repeat the same mistake hundreds or thousands of times before anyone realizes something is wrong. An automated process can read, copy, classify, modify, or delete information much faster than a person, and it can do so quietly in the background where fewer people notice it. That means overprivileged non-human identities are not just a technical detail hiding behind the scenes. They are part of the real attack surface of the organization. If a service account is stolen, if an AI bot is connected to too many systems, or if an automated workflow is misconfigured, the damage can spread quickly across systems, data sets, and business processes. Beginners sometimes assume automation is safer because machines follow instructions consistently. The deeper truth is that machines consistently follow whatever access they have been given, whether that access was smartly scoped or dangerously broad. The life cycle idea is what keeps this topic from becoming a random collection of warnings. A life cycle means that every non-human identity should have a beginning, a purpose during use, regular checkpoints while it remains active, and a clear ending when the need is gone. That sounds simple, but it changes the way an organization thinks. Instead of creating a bot or service account because a project needs it right now and then forgetting about it, lifecycle thinking asks who requested it, why it exists, what systems it should touch, what level of access it actually needs, who owns it, how its use will be reviewed, and when it should be reduced or removed. This is important because bots and service accounts do not manage themselves. They do not explain their own business need, and they do not notify a manager when their privileges have outlived the project that justified them. A lifecycle approach gives organizations a way to make software identities visible, accountable, and changeable instead of permanent background objects that quietly accumulate power. Creation is the first place where control can either begin well or go wrong immediately. When a team wants to introduce an AI bot or a service account, The request should be connected to a real business purpose rather than a vague desire for convenience or future flexibility. If the purpose is to summarize support tickets, the access should be designed around that task and not around every system the team can think of just in case it might be useful later. If the purpose is to move approved files from one system to another, the identity should be scoped to that narrow function and not given a broad set of unrelated rights across the environment. A good beginning also includes naming the owner who is accountable for the identity, even though the identity itself is non-human. Someone must be responsible for its need, its permissions, its review, and its retirement. Without clear human ownership, software identities tend to drift into a dangerous state where everyone depends on them, but nobody is truly accountable for what they can access. Least privilege is the principle that keeps these identities from becoming oversized tools with oversized risk. It means the bot or service account gets only the access necessary to perform its intended function and nothing more. That sounds obvious until real work pressure begins, because teams often grant extra access to avoid future delays, to reduce troubleshooting, or to prevent support tickets when the automation hits an unexpected edge case. The short-term convenience feels helpful, but the long-term effect is an identity that can read more data than it needs, write to more systems than it should, or carry administrative capabilities that were added for setup and never removed. Least privilege pushes back against that habit by asking more precise questions. Does the bot need read access, or does it also need write access? Does it need the ability to change records, or only to suggest changes for a human to approve? Does it need access to one database table, one folder, one queue, or one application role? Or is it being given a much wider footprint because narrowing it takes more effort? These are not minor design details. They are the difference between controlled automation and automation that quietly outruns governance. Another important part of control is how these identities prove themselves to systems. Bots and service accounts often authenticate through credentials such as passwords, keys, certificates, or access tokens, and those trust mechanisms become extremely important because they are the digital equivalent of the identity's keys. If those secrets are exposed, copied, or left unmanaged, an attacker may be able to impersonate the automation without needing to compromise a human user first. This is one reason non-human identities can be so attractive to attackers. They may be less visible, less frequently reviewed, and sometimes granted broad privileges so that integrations keep running smoothly. Beginners sometimes think the danger is mostly about what the bot is allowed to do after login, but the ability to impersonate the bot in the first place is just as important. Good lifecycle control means the organization knows what credentials the identity uses, where they are stored, how their use is monitored, when they are rotated, and how they are revoked if the service changes or ends. If the identity's access is strong but the trust mechanism around it is weak, the organization has only solved half of the problem. Privilege drift is especially dangerous for AI bots and service accounts because these identities are often created for a focused reason and then slowly stretched into general-purpose helpers. A team may begin with a bot that answers simple policy questions from an internal knowledge source. Soon it is allowed to open tickets, then to update ticket fields, then to pull information from collaboration platforms, then to query a database for supporting details, and eventually to send automated messages to other systems. Every step may feel reasonable when judged alone, but the total picture can become far more powerful than anyone intended. The same pattern appears with service accounts used for integrations, reporting, or migrations. Temporary access added during testing or troubleshooting often becomes permanent because nobody goes back to reduce it later. This is why lifecycle reviews matter so much. They force the organization to look at the current identity as it exists today, not as it was originally imagined months ago, and to decide whether all of that accumulated access still has a real business justification. Review and monitoring bring the lifecycle into the middle stage where risk is either kept visible or allowed to disappear into background noise. A non-human identity should not be treated as safe forever just because it was approved once and seems to be working. Organizations need to know whether the bot is still performing the function it was created for, whether it is accessing only the systems it should, whether it is running more frequently than expected, and whether it has become dormant or unusually active in ways that deserve attention. Monitoring is especially useful with automation because bots often have predictable behavior. If a service account normally reads from one application every hour and suddenly starts touching new systems or moving much larger volumes of data, that shift may be a sign of compromise, misuse, or misconfiguration. Reviews are also important because business needs change. The project may end, the tool may be replaced, or the data source may become more sensitive than it was at the start. Without regular review, the identity remains frozen in yesterday's assumptions even while the environment around it moves on. AI adds another layer of concern because the software may not only retrieve or transmit data, but also interpret it and decide what action to take next. That creates a temptation to connect the bot to many tools and sources so it can appear more useful, more responsive, and more capable. The problem is that every added connector expands the bot's reach and increases the chance that it can see, infer, or act on information far beyond its original purpose. A bot that can read internal documents, check a ticketing system, send messages, and update records across multiple applications may become very powerful even if no single permission looked dangerous on its own. Good control means separating what the bot can observe from what it can change, and separating low-risk tasks from high-impact actions that should require stronger review or human approval. Not every AI bot should be able to execute actions directly, and not every helpful automation needs broad system access to be valuable. The most secure design is often the one that resists the urge to make the bot universally capable. A simple example makes this clearer. Imagine a customer support bot designed to help agents find order status information and draft responses to routine questions. To do that job, it may need access to product data, shipping status, and approved support knowledge. It probably does not need access to payroll records, employee performance notes, legal documents, or administrative controls for the company's identity platform. If the bot is instead connected to a broad internal search space, because that was faster during setup, it may retrieve or expose sensitive information that has nothing to do with customer support. Now imagine the bot can also change shipping addresses, issue refunds, and close fraud alerts automatically because the team wanted a smoother customer experience. At that point, the design has moved from assistance into high-risk action. Least privilege would narrow the data it can see, narrow the systems it can touch, and likely require stronger oversight for any action that affects money, identity, or security-sensitive workflows. That is the practical value of Lifecycle and least privilege working together instead of being treated as abstract policy language. Several misconceptions make these controls harder to apply unless beginners learn to spot them early. One misconception is that bots do not need strong governance because they are not emotional, curious, or malicious in the human sense. That misses the point entirely, because the main risk is not the bot having human motives. The risk is the bot having excessive reach, weakly protected credentials, or flawed instructions that operate at scale. Another misconception is that a service account tied to an internal application is automatically safe because it belongs to trusted infrastructure. Internal systems can still be misused, compromised, or forgotten, and their identities can still carry dangerous privileges. A third misconception is that over-provisioning makes automation more reliable. In the short term, broad access can reduce support friction, but it also ensures that when something goes wrong, the effect is larger and harder to contain. Security does not improve by making every non-human identity powerful enough to handle every imagined scenario. It improves when permissions stay tightly connected to current purpose and are reduced as soon as that purpose changes. Ownership and retirement are where many organizations reveal whether they truly manage non-human identities or simply accumulate them. Every bot and service account should have a clearly identified owner who can explain why it exists, confirm what it needs, review what it does, and approve its continued use. That ownership cannot disappear just because the original developer left, the project manager changed teams, or the vendor relationship evolved. If the organization loses track of who owns an AI bot or service account, it becomes much harder to review, modify, or safely remove. Retirement matters just as much as creation. When the project ends, when the integration is replaced, when the bot is redesigned, or when the business process no longer exists, the access should be reduced or removed cleanly. Credentials should be revoked, integrations should be closed, permissions should be withdrawn, and any dependent ownership should be reassigned where necessary. A lifecycle only works if it includes a real ending, because forgotten automation with lingering access is one of the easiest ways for quiet risk to stay inside an environment for years. By the end of this discussion, the main idea should feel clear and practical rather than mysterious. AI bots and service accounts are identities with real access, real trust relationships, and real security consequences, even though no human logs in directly as them during normal work. That means they must be controlled through the same disciplined thinking that supports strong IAM for people, with careful creation, clear ownership, appropriate authentication, regular review, and clean retirement when the need ends. Least privilege is what keeps these identities useful without making them unnecessarily dangerous, because it limits both the data they can reach and the actions they can perform. When organizations skip lifecycle control, automation tends to collect power quietly in the background until nobody can fully explain what it can do. When they apply lifecycle and least privilege together, bots and service accounts become more manageable, more accountable, and far less likely to become hidden shortcuts to sensitive systems and data.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.